Watercolour backgrounds can be so easy to make, as well as fun. When you make them, you can often create a lot in one go. So today I'm showing you 3 ways to add foils over your watercolour backgrounds. This is great if you have a stack of unused watercolour backgrounds to use up. But don't worry, I'm creating 3 quick backgrounds in this video today if you need some quick and easy backgrounds to use. I'm Verity and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, why not think about subscribing so you don't miss out on my next video. Foiling can really add a touch of glam to your watercolour backgrounds, and while have so many colours to choose from, you'll be able to pair up a foil with your background in no time. First of all, I'm going to show you 3 different watercolour backgrounds and how I've created them. So I've taped 2 pieces of watercolour card down to a wooden clipboard and I'm using purple tape to do this. This will just help reduce the warping to the card when I'm adding water. First of all, I'm using a flat brush to apply clean, clear water to the card. And next, I'm using my Prima Marketing Ink Tropicals watercolour pan set along with a round brush. So I'm picking up number 20 with my brush, and this is the purple from the set, and dabbing the colour randomly onto the card. Now, as I've already put water onto the card, this will soften the edges of the colour as it starts to spread out. Next, I'm then using number 22, a lovely pink, and adding this down towards the bottom, making sure that I overlap the colours slightly so they blend with one another. Now, you need to remember watercolours dry back paler than the colour that you apply. So to intensify the colours, I'm first of all using my dual speed heat gun from Wow on heat setting 1 to dry the panel. This heat setting is great for this, as this will dry your panel but without adding too much heat, which would of course warp your panel. So I'm going back in, adding some clear water again and repeating the process to intensify the colours for a vivid background. So I'm just adding more purple on top of the purple and adding some more pink over the top of the pink to make sure the colours are bold and vivid. For the second background, I'm again adding clear, clean water to the background, and then I'm using my Pink Fresh Studio liquid watercolours. These are great as they come with little droppers, so you can then drop the colour into your water. When you do this, the colour just spreads and can create really interesting patterns. So the colours I'm using on this background are Sky Blue, Aquamarine and Sapphire. If you're not liking how the pattern is turning out, you can always go in with a paintbrush to move the colour about or even to soften up the edges. So this panel was left to dry whilst I worked on the third watercolour background. For the third panel, I'm creating this in a very similar manner to the first panel. Again, adding clear, clean water on the card and then dabbing the colour in with a round brush. This time I was going for a bit more of an ombre. So the watercolours I used on this background are for Altenew watercolour pan set, and I used Pink Diamond, Puffy Heart, Purple Wine and Cosmic Berry. I also went for a much more softer background, so I didn't add a second layer of colour. All these panels were left to dry whilst I started working on some of the other foiled elements of the cards. So for the first foiling technique, we are going to use the Fab Foils with peel and stick toner sheets. This method is great for creating foil card to die cut from. So I'm using a piece of violet Fab Foil, which is a beautiful purple foil, and I'm just cutting enough foil that covers the size of the dies that I'm going to die cut. Now, I had 3 animals that I was going to die cut, but I wasn't sure which one I wanted to use. I only ended up using one of them in the end, but the other 2 can be used later on in future projects. Once I've cut a piece of toner card to size, I'm warming up my Mink machine. Now you can use a laminator for this as well. I just happen to have a Mink machine. And once I've switched it on, I've turned it to setting 3 to heat up. Next, I'm placing the toner sheet along with the foil colour side facing up into the carrier sheet over the top of the toner sheet. And once the machine is hot, so that the light has turned green on my machine, I'm feeding the carrier sheet through the machine. The reason I have a piece of white paper inside my carrier sheet as well is that I got a bit of toner on my carrier sheet, and to prevent that getting transferred onto my projects, I just use a piece of paper to protect my projects. Once it's fed through, it's time to peel and reveal the foiled magic. So I've now got a piece of foiled card in the colour that I want, and I can die cut from this. But I haven't got to go out and buy a whole pack of foiled card in one colour using this in one colour. Instead, using this method, I can create lots of different coloured foiled card when I actually need it. Now I'm running this through my Spellbinder's Prism die cutting machine with the 3 dies. These dies are from Do Crafts. And as this is a peel and stick card, when you remove the die cut, it already has an adhesive on the back, saving you so much time when using intricate dies like this. So I've repeated this method, but instead used a piece of blush fab foil, as I wanted a foiled circle for the die cut to sit on. And I feel like this blush is a new favourite fab foil colour of mine. It's absolutely gorgeous. To assemble this first card, I've used the Altenew Dotted Scales Debossing cover plate on the watercolour background just to add some texture to the card. I've also die cut 2 circles out of vellum to mat and layer the foiled elements just to add some more interest. I've then also layered these up with foam pads. For this sentiment, I've die cut the Birch Press Designs Sugar Script Thanks die out of white card and mounted this onto the card with foam pads and liquid glue. In addition, I've added a You're So Kind heat emboss sentiment onto black card using Opaque bright white embossing powder. And to finish the card off, I'm just using Gina K Connect glue to adhere some Lucy's Cards Freesia sequin mix to the front of the card, which just goes with the purples and the pinks beautifully. For the second method of adding foils over watercolour backgrounds, I'm using a stencil and transfer gel over the first watercolour background I created. To step the stenciling up a little, I've created a makeshift mask out of white card with a circle die, and I've placed this over my stencil, which is sitting over the top of the background. The stencil that I'm using here is the Leafy stencil from Gina K Designs. Now, using a spatula, I'm just applying the transfer gel over the stencil, but being really careful when I apply this, as I've only secured the stencil down with some tape. Applying the gel slowly prevents the gel from squidging underneath the stencil and ruining the design. Once the circle is completely covered, you can then remove the mask and reveal a perfect circle, but then we can remove the stencil as well to reveal the pattern within that circle. You'll want to make sure that you clean all of your tools and stencils really well, as if you leave the gel on them to dry, it can ruin them in the future and you can't use them. So just make sure you clean them really well. You'll want to leave this panel to dry for a couple of hours until the gel turns from white to clear. Now, I left my panel to dry for quite some time, but I was running out of time to film, so I sped the process up a little near the end, just using the heat setting 1 on my dual speed heat gun. You'll want to make sure that you keep the gun moving to prevent it from ruining the gel, but I found it worked really well and finished off drying my panel, so I could then actually use it quickly. For this card, I'm using the Teal Fab Foil, and I've trimmed a piece of foil down to just larger than the circle, and I'm placing this over the gel colour side up inside the carrier sheet. And again, I'm using my ink machine, but you can use the laminator just to adhere the foil over the gel. Of course, peeling the foil and then revealing the design underneath never tires. I just really love how this teal pops against those pinks and purples within the background. To finish the card off, the foil background was trimmed down with a circle die and then foam mounted onto a white card. A layered white happy die cut from Lawnform was adhered to the front with liquid glue, and then a stamped birthday sentiment was foam mounted onto the front to finish the sentiment off. And again, I've used a few sequins from the same sequin mix and added these to the front of the card to finish them off. Now, for the last technique, we are going to apply foil over the watercolour background using bonding powder. So for this background, I'm using the Paper Hug stamp set designed by Ashley from the Wow creative team. And I'm only going to use part of the background to peek through this foiling. This is a great way if you're not keen on the whole background to then selectively find a part of it that you like and use that instead. So I'm using my Misty tool and I'm stamping in clear ultra slow dry embossing ink onto the background and then covering with bonding powder. This is a very fine powder, but don't mix it up with white embossing powder as it's not the same. In the past, I've put it back in the wrong pot before and ruined my white powder, so make sure you keep them separate. When you heat set this powder, it goes clear, and you might confuse it with clear gloss embossing powder. However, this powder is sticky to the touch when heat set, and this sticky property allows you to add the foil over the top, and the foil sticks to that sticky surface. So I'm using the blush foil over this watercolour background as it really pops with that blue. So you place the foil colour side up and then using a bone folder, burnish the foil into your stamping. Now this stays sticky for a while, but if you don't add the foil straight away, you can always reactivate the powder by adding heat over the top again, and it makes it sticky again. This also means if you've missed a few spots in the stamping with the foil, you can reheat it and then reapply the foil again and get perfect foiled stamping. It's brilliant. And there we have a lovely foiled stamp image using the bonding powder. So we've got this lovely blush foil over the watercolour background and really popping against that blue. This was then trimmed down and foam mounted onto a white card panel, and I'm just stamping the sentiment "For you, my friend" from the same paper hug stamp set onto the card. To finish the card off, I then wanted to add just a little heart, die cut heart out of Teal Fab Foil. So of course I'm going back to method 1 where I'm using the toner sheets to foil a little bit of teal foil to create my own teal foil card, then running that through my prism machine with a heart and foam mounting this onto the front of the panel. The whole panel was then adhered to a pink card base. I would love to know which card or technique was your favourite, so just let me know in the comments below. I think the colours from the watercolour backgrounds compare beautifully with foiled elements, whether that's a die cut, a stencil design or stamped images. I hope this video has shown you several ways to combine the two and has inspired you to get your foils out. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and why not subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can be notified when the next video is up. This was produced as part of my design teamwork for Wow Embossing Powder, and links are listed below. 10% discount at the shop, just enter the code you can see on screen. Also, why not check out this other video for some more inspiration. Until next time, happy crafting!